And it's funny, but since my guys were little, on their mirrors, we had a little sign on them that said, look in the mirror, that's your competition. How are you going to show up today? And I think when they're in that frame, you can really look at the development piece of it a little bit more, without the stress, and kind of like a personal sort of business plan. And I use the same in the consulting. Where are you now? Where do you want to go? And what's the best route for how you're going to get there? And the honesty thing is, it requires you to to do some reality checks. And I run into so many parents, and I sort of have these three little reality checks. And I say to them, well, last time I checked, I didn't see anybody in the NHL at 14, 15, 16, 17 years old. And it drives home the point that doesn't matter how good you are now, but how good you're going to be when it really matters in your late teens and your early 20s. And you guys saw the slide where Mike showed that statistic that the average age is 23.1 years old. And you sit back and you think of that, and goalies are even older. And, we all get so conditioned to see all these young stars, Cale included, being massively promoted by the NHL. And it paints an unrealistic picture. And that's a hard pill to swallow, because you want to get there, but you have to ask sort of, what's the rush? And so that in the back of your mind goes, wow, that's a long time. Actually, it's a long time that I could use for my development. The second reality check, and I don't want to be a Danny Downer, but there's only approximately 700 players playing in the NHL, maybe a few thousand more playing pro across the world, including Europe. So you need to be pretty elite, and you get elite by being the best developed you can. And the third one is, and then again, don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but it's possible that the plan A, your hockey plan, might not work out. So it's a great idea to have a plan B, and having a great education gives you a ton more options for your plan B. So you boil those three reality checks down, and kind of for Laura and I, sort of three questions. And we sort of, well, what route gives us the longest development time for Cale and Taylor with the resources to best help them succeed? Imagine if you could do that route, playing in a super competitive hockey league for as long as you can, so you have the best chance to try to make it while you're hedging your bets to get a great education. And then imagine if you developed your hockey talent and identity enough that you could actually earn a scholarship so that somebody else would pay for it. That was huge too, to take in the road. Well, you put all those together and you go, man, it's absolutely phenomenal to have an NHL dream, but there's also that reality side that says a backup education plan with as long chance to make it your own goal to play hockey. That sounded like a super solid plan. And that was really the basis, the genesis, to say we want to try to have success to make it to the NCAA route, which then in Alberta, it leads it absolutely naturally to why we chose the AJHL, not only to keep the eligibility, but because it's a darn good development league. And it gave us that opportunity for the guys to impress an NCAA school. And I can tell you from my experience, since my nephew Mark and Cale and now Taylor, the league just gets getting better every year, more competitive, more, I'll use the word professional in the way it's run. And, credit to Ryan, who's on the call, of just, this is an absolute viable place to have your kids develop. And I get a lot of parents saying, yeah, well, nobody, how will they be seen? You see these big arenas in the Canadian Hockey League. And I'm saying, man, just throw those worries aside, because NCAA recruiters are all over the place. They even go to Bonnyville. Imagine that, hey? But the reality is they're there. And with Hockey TV, which again, the production quality from when my nephew was there 7 years ago was not great. Now it's, some of the broadcasts are phenomenal. If you're good, you're gonna be seen, and it's attended by NHL scouts, and even honestly, a lot of Western Hockey League scouts, because they know their draft is not perfect, as they're looking for other players all the time. So if you're good, you're gonna have eyeballs on you in the AJHL. So that's why we chose it. And then once we got there, honestly, the two words were just beyond expectations. The commitment that we saw as a family to both developing Cale in hockey and personal growth was just amazing. And you pinch yourself that you had the opportunity. From the coaches that we had at UMass, just a phenomenal group, to the training and the development resources, the weight room, everything was just incredible. And we loved the way the structure, Cale was able to build, habit patterns, and also build his body under the world-class guidance of hockey guys, not just for bulk and things, but the exercises and stuff that really mattered. And you see these facilities and you just, you just shake your head how amazing they are. And then on the same thing on the academic side, we found the support from team resources there. It's a welcoming hand. You feel like part of family, and you just feel confident that, wow, your kid's getting an education. There's great people surrounding it. So it was amazing. And honestly, you can't put a price tag on the long friendships that Cale's going to have from people all over the States and Canada. So huge things there. From the hockey perspective, which these guys can attest to way better than I, but the games are intense. There's 2 of them a week, and they're just battles. So that pressure to perform is amazing. It helps you develop, and you're playing against men. It's that whole different level from when you watch junior, the teenagers, and it's that level that you need. In Cale's case, he needed it. There's no way he could have not put junior and gone even a year earlier. But it was the development, both mentally and physical, that made all the difference for him to jump in. And it's interesting because we were at the Frozen Four there and seeing him play against Minnesota Duluth, and it was a war. And then the next day, signing and jumping into the NHL playoffs, and I couldn't believe it. Talking that night, he goes, "You know what, Dad? The pressure in that game was more than the playoffs." And you just go, "Holy cow!" And people are like, "Well, how could he have done it? How could he have been so smooth going in there?" Well, he just lived it and breathed it at the highest level with men. And that was amazing experience. So it just paid off, that whole thing from development, that we had a plan, we stuck to it, and it worked out. So it just made it so logical. And I can tell you that the atmosphere, and you saw a bit on that video, was kind of choppy on mine, but when you get to experience the NCAA game with the dueling bands and the passionate fans, the hair on your arm stands up, and it's just a really, really neat experience. So sort of to sum up on the stuff for the parents and the kids that are on this call now, and why it's so cool that you're on this and listening, is now is the time where you have those options. And it's the opportunity, one of the few, where you have to actually control your destiny related to the effort you want to put into it and the amount of information that you want to seek. So this is phenomenal. And this panel is going to be just an amazing amount of resources. But the more options more questions you can ask, the better you'll understand all of your options. And so you don't limit them. And that's the biggest fear that I have talking to people all the time. You make a decision and you just didn't know it was out there. So kudos for listening to this, and the information you're going to get to help you forge, your plan, your goals. So it's not peer pressure, and it's not marketing guys that are making you make a decision. So hope that gives a little bit of insight into the path we took.